for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is Brett Bevell. And he might pronounce that Bevell. I'll have to ask him that here in just a second. But we're going to be discussing his new book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living. And I'm assuming this is the new book since it's the most recent one the publishers informed me about and asked me to do an interview on, although sometimes authors have told me they have newer versions after I get them live on the air. We'll find that out in a minute also. If y'all have any questions y'all want to call in, the number is 832-632-7904. And what I'll probably do, since I don't have a hold button on this here Skype setup yet, at least not unless they want to make one, is I'll go ahead and draw you in, and you just wait until I, actually say something to you, and you can just hear the show live on the phone until we do get to you. And if you want to learn more about Brett, you can go to his website, www.brettbevell.com. That's BRETTBEVELL. So, Brett, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Royce?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Is that Bevell or Bevell?
I pronounce it Bevell.
Bevell, okay. I wasn't exactly sure. I knew it probably could have been pronounced more ways than one. So, I mean, I got the same kind of name. Holloman is sometimes spelled with a A-N and E-N and I-M-A-N. It can get confusing, in other words.
Yeah.
So, now, I got to tell you, your book cover stands out to me above all the other book covers I've seen in 7 years because it says New Reiki Software for Divine Living, and software and book just do not seem to connect in my thought process.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little something about yourself and what got you interested in writing about this, and maybe even why you call it software, because I'm pretty sure it's not a computer program, is it?
Right. No, it's not at all. So, so my Reiki journey goes all the way back to the early 1990s. I started studying with a Reiki master named Elka Palm in New York City in early 1990s, and then in 1995 got my master level from a woman named Mary Dudek. And then after that, my Reiki journey kind of took a different turn than a lot of Reiki teachers. I really started investigating a lot of shamanic techniques and really experimenting with ways of fusing together certain shamanic techniques with certain Reiki techniques. And what I found was that when you did that sometimes it would open a doorway for one to do things with Reiki that weren't traditionally taught as being possible. So, for example, one healer being able to send energy to many people simultaneously, doing these large group healings and things of that nature. So the reason I call the book New Reiki Software for Divine Living is, to me, it really feels like an energetic upgrade to the whole system. So I kind of think of it the same way one might think about, getting a new upgrade on their Mac computer in terms of the software. And what the software is really something that I call the Reiki Crystal of Awakening. And this came to me in 2007 when I was traveling in Asia. I had this profound mystical experience where I literally felt the presence of Mikao Usui, who's the founder of Reiki. He's long since passed, but I felt his presence across from me and felt this ball of white light come from him into my heart chakra. And when that happened, I didn't really totally understand everything that came with it. I was having a lot of new insights about Reiki, insights that became my book before this one, which is called Reiki for Spiritual Healing. So at first I just thought there was a lot of information in this ball of light. But after several years of really sitting with it and kind of going deeper into it, I realized that this ball of light was literally sort of an energetic upgrade to the entire system of Reiki that allowed one to do things very easily with Reiki, pretty much just from either your thoughts or your voice. And yet the energy was still very palpable and very powerful. So that's why I use the term New Reiki Software for Divine Living.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But you kind of got me to thinking when you use the term crystal. Is it possible to use crystals to enhance the healing power of Reiki magic?
Oh, certainly you can. You can certainly do that. I know a lot of healers who use, a combination of, whether it's quartz crystals or rose quartz or other kinds of crystals, in the process of healing. The crystal I'm talking about is more of an energetic crystal. So it's not a physical crystal, but it's an energetic crystal that's made out of the light that is Reiki. And once a person is empowered to it, which the book can actually offer for a person, it allows you to literally send Reiki through time and space simply with your thoughts or your voice. I mean, it's so user-friendly. And the subtitle on the book, I call it An Energetic Embodiment of Divine Grace. And the reason I mention that is because I love Reiki and I love the tradition of Reiki, and I still teach traditional Reiki trainings at the Omega Institute. I lead their traditional Reiki trainings. But as much as I love traditional Reiki, one thing I found over the years was that often some really wonderful people would sort of get stuck in their tracks in terms of the training, because maybe, in first degree, there's a lot of hand positions that maybe they wouldn't memorize. In the second degree, there's some very complex symbols that might be challenging for some people to totally remember. And so I would notice some people who were really wonderful human beings and probably could be wonderful healers just kind of getting stuck along the way. And so what I feel that this new software that I call the Reiki Crystal, what it allows is literally such a user-friendly and accessible way for anybody to be able to access the energy of Reiki.
So I've just got to ask this, because I keep hearing you use terms like user-friendly and Mac. Do you have a history in computer, or like being an IT tech or something before you got to writing books and into Reiki?
No, I don't. The funny thing is I'm actually one of those people that's kind of technologically challenged. I only got my cell phone about 6 months ago. When I do go on the computer, it's pretty much doing email and just, checking stuff on the internet. I'm really not at all that savvy when it comes to technology in that way. But I almost think that on some level actually kind of helps me understand that problem more, about really wanting to be able to do something and not having the know-how. So one thing I really liked about this Reiki crystal is that literally, you can make the energy flow simply through a thought or simply by verbally requesting it. I mean, it's so simple. It's kind of crazy,
Well, I know several people that are Reiki healers, and as I understand it, now I'm saying this mostly for the benefit of newcomers to the field, Reiki healing is a form of energy healing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's a form of energy healing that it can be traced back to a man named Mikao Usui, who lived in Japan in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and then came to the United States shortly before World War II from a Japanese-American woman named Hawaii Takata, who had studied it in Japan and then brought it back to the United States. And then she initiated 22 Reiki masters, and then they initiated more people, and it's kind of been growing exponentially ever since. But, the word Reiki, if you were to translate it in Japanese, it can have one of two meanings. The most popular meaning that people ascribe to it is universal life force energy. But there's another way to read the Japanese kanji, which is divine life force energy. And for me, I kind of prefer the latter, because I really do believe that it's coming from a higher source.
Okay. Now, is this something that people can say, like, apply at a college to learn, or there's somewhere special you have to? Because I heard you mention you got a degree in it of some form, or a certification or something like that.
Yeah, so I was trained in the traditional system. So there's different degrees in it, and with each degree you would receive a training, usually from a Reiki master, and then the Reiki master would usually give you a certificate at the end. So in the lineage that I studied, there's 3 levels. There's the first level where you're initiated into Reiki and you learn how to do a treatment on yourself and also how to do a treatment on somebody else. And then there's the second level where you receive another initiation. You learn 3 Reiki symbols, one of which makes the energy flow stronger, a second of which allows you to focus it for mental emotional healing, and then a third of which allows you to send Reiki distantly across great distance, thousands of miles away, as well as through time. so that's the second level. And then in the lineage I learned, the third level is the master level. So you receive another initiation, and you learn more symbols, and you learn how to use those symbols to initiate others. There are some schools that break that up into two parts. So for them, they teach it as a 4-degree system, but the essential teachings are pretty much the same. I have some Reiki master friends who learned it the other way as a 4-degree system, but the basic teachings are the same.
Well, I just heard you mention sending it through time.
Yeah.
What would be the purpose or the benefit of sending Reiki either forward or backward in time?
Yeah, so, I mean, that actually can be a lot of benefits. So sending it backwards in time, certainly you can literally send it to the point of any particular trauma or issue that you're working on. And it's not that it's going to change the past. I mean, the past is set once it occurs. But what you can do is you can change that energetic signature of the past and how it relates to you in present time. And so, you can really release a lot of, deep wounds, deep traumas, and really heal it in a really profound way by sending it backwards in time to the moment it occurred. Sending it forwards in time gives you the benefit to send it, towards situations, as well as, maybe you're going to have a long day and you're going to be traveling and you're not going to feel like you have time to give your session to yourself at the end of the day. Earlier in the day you could send it forward to yourself through time, at a particular time, and then just lay down and receive the treatment. So there's a lot of ways that you can send it through time. I do a lot of distant healings with some people in California, one of whom endorsed the book, which is Carrie Ann Inaba from Dancing with the Stars. And so when I send to her, I'll send to her treatments through time just with the intention that it's, arriving to her at the time that she would like over in California, even though I live here in New York. So it's a very powerful system in terms of being able to sort of transmute time and space in that way.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting. I never really, until now, had given it a lot of thought. Now, on this, Reiki, it's not something that's really being considered as accepted by mainstream yet, though, is it?
Well, it's not mainstream in the sense of, it's not like they study it in medical school or anything like that. But it is starting to get some acceptance in the sense that, there are some more progressive hospitals that now will offer Reiki as a form of palliative care. I actually had two friends last year who had both gone in for minor surgical issues, and in both situations, without even asking at the hospital, they asked them if they wanted some Reiki just as part of their sort of, palliative care aspect. And I know a few years ago I think it was either on Oprah or maybe on his own show, Dr. Oz gave a big ringing endorsement of Reiki as one of his preferred modalities of alternative healing. So even though it's not totally accepted within the Western models, it is starting to get some notice, at least on some of the more progressive ends of Western medicine.
And does it work with degenerative conditions that are considered incurable?
Reiki is always going to work for the highest good. So, there's some situations where, depending on what the disease is, it might simply help alleviate a person's pain. There are some situations where it might actually help a person, on the physical level. I do have, a story that I like to share. There's a friend of mine named Michelle Denis who has a Reiki center in Vancouver, Canada, and she was doing repeated treatments on somebody who was coming to her who had thyroid cancer. And now the woman was doing other things as well, so I'm not going to say that it was all the Reiki that made the difference. She was also getting acupuncture and changing her diet and doing a number of things to really help heal herself. But, Reiki was part of that equation, and the woman's cancer went into complete remission. Now, again, I can't say that it was all because of the Reiki, but I certainly think that her getting those sessions was part of her healing from that disease. So there have been certainly stories of people, moving through some definitely challenging issues using Reiki. Not just on the physical level as well. It can also be used for mental, emotional healing, and I've known people, who've overcome some really large obstacles by using Reiki in that way.
Okay, would Reiki by any chance be anything like related to prayer?
One could think of it in that way. To me, I sort of think of it as an energetic prayer, because I really do believe that it's coming from the divine, whatever name one person wants to give to that. In Reiki, we don't tell people what to believe in, but we do sort of ascribe that this energy is definitely coming from a higher place. It's not our energy as human beings, but it's coming from that higher source. And so, I've known a lot of people in trainings will often have what's called a Reiki meditation, where you kind of go into a meditation to sort of meet whatever spiritual beings might be with you on your Reiki journey. And I've known a lot of people who, during those meditations, see, angels or Mother Mary or Jesus or, other spiritual masters as part of that process. So even though we don't necessarily ascribe Reiki to a particular religion, we do believe that the energy is coming from a higher source. And so in that way, I do think it could be sort of linked to prayer in that way. And, often you do say a prayer in the beginning that the treatment is always going to be for the highest good of all. So there's certainly a very spiritual nature to it. It's not intended to be about the practitioner's personal will. It's intended to always be working for the highest good of all.
Well, it's kind of interesting you mentioned no particular religion, because when I said that, I actually had not given a thought to any, particular religion, because I know that just about almost every religion I've ever heard of uses prayer, in other words. So
right.
That would make it pretty much a universal tool, much like Reiki is, that wouldn't necessarily have to be confined to a particular religion, in other words.
Right, yeah.
I know that it's been linked to Christianity, but let's face it, Muslims pray, witches pray. Christians are the only ones that get noticed the most about it.
Yeah.
Now, I was just wondering if you could maybe give everybody kind of without giving away the whole book there, but an idea about what kind of stuff they can expect to find in the book.
Yeah, so the book begins by, there's the first couple chapters that you read that actually give you the empowerment for the Reiki crystal. So there's a portion where you read this, paragraph that is sort of energetically empowered with the energy of the crystal. And so as you read it, it's literally creating that energetic crystal in your system. And then once that's created, then the book talks you through very simple, user-friendly ways to use the crystal to do healings on yourself, as well as healings on others. There's also an area of the book that talks about what I call Reiki Affirmations, which are just like almost like little prayers or little sayings that you can say out loud that, again, have sort of an energetic quality to them to help bring a sense of peace and calm. And there's also something about the crystal that is really, again, outside the box of traditional Reiki training, is that there's 88 pre-programmed treatments in the crystal where you can literally just ask your crystal to send you energy the same way you would like order off a menu at the restaurant. So you can literally ask your crystal to send you, Reiki treatment number 6 or Reiki treatment number 33 or whatever the number might be. And each of those has its own specific healing and has its own specific purpose. So it makes Reiki so incredibly user-friendly that really anybody at all could use it. And again, that was the intention, just to make it sort of more accessible to the general public.
Reiki speed dial.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded kind of like, so I went with it. But yeah, it does sound kind of funny though at the same time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But okay, now that's what I was thinking about. That sounds like quite a bit in there. So you actually program the crystal for what you want its uses to be yourself, and you can program it for a wide variety of different things. In other words, they can tailor-made it to suit their own needs.
They could. I mean, there's 88 that are pre-programmed that are in the book. So anybody who's empowered with it could certainly pre-program it for their own intention too, Okay,
but the book doesn't come with a crystal though, does it?
it doesn't come with a physical crystal, but you do get this energetic crystal that, that literally sort of sits in front of the heart chakra. And, it can be quite powerful. I don't know if it's something that, that you or your listeners would be interested in, but if you wanted me to, I could even send you just a short little demonstration here across the radio if you wanted to get a sense of what it feels like.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, what I would do is I would just ask you and all of your listeners to just relax, and then I'll just I'll talk to my Reiki crystal, because that's literally how you use it. You just talk to it, and I'll invite it to just send some energy out just for a few minutes. I don't want to take over the whole show with a treatment, but for just a few minutes, just so that you and your listeners could get an experience of that. That sounds okay to you?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. So again, just go ahead and get relaxed, whether you're sitting in a chair or wherever you might be. And I'm just going to invite my Reiki crystal to begin sending Reiki to everybody's brain and nervous system that's listening to this radio show, just to bring a sense of calm and inner peace. And while that's going on, I'd like to invite my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to everybody's skeletal system, all the bones, all the cartilage, all the vertebrae in their spine. And I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal as well to send Reiki to everybody's digestive systems, all aspects of their digestive system receiving Reiki from my Reiki crystal. And I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to everybody's muscular system who's listening to this, all their muscles, all their ligaments, all their tendons, all receiving Reiki. And I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal to create around everybody who's listening to this radio program something I call a Reiki sphere of divine grace, which is like a huge bubble of Reiki light completely surrounding each individual who's listening to this program. And then I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal to bring everybody into a Reiki meditation just for deep stillness and deep inner peace, just so that they know that divine place that exists within. And then I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal to send Reiki to everybody's major organs, all their major organs and all their major glands, anywhere where healing is needed. I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal to please send that out to everybody who's listening to this radio program now. And then I'd like to ask my Reiki crystal as well to just send a Reiki wave, just like a wave of Reiki energy rolling from the top of everybody's head all the way down to their feet. And then again, just trying to keep it kind of short here, just for the sort of radio sample, I'm going to invite my Reiki crystal to just shift all the different lines of light that it's been sending to now be for the most gentle and the most perfect form of integration for each person who's listening to this radio show. And as that integration line of light occurs, for some people, they sometimes might sense the energy feeling a little more heavy or a little more dense, and that's simply because the energy, again, is reminding you of your own physical presence during the integration portion of the healing. And so again, that's just sort of a short, really short sample. I could certainly, go longer if I was doing a healing with an individual, but just a quick sample.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Everybody.
Now, I was going to ask you on that a minute ago.
Yeah.
The people that are going to be listening at YouTube or in my archive, is that going to have an effect on them while they're listening?
It will. I actually have, you ever heard of SoundCloud?
No, I've heard of web page clouds.
Okay, so SoundCloud is almost kind of like an audio version of YouTube where you can just put little audio recordings and anybody can go listen to them. So I have a number of healings that are posted on SoundCloud where anyone can go on the SoundCloud and then put my name in there, Brett Bevell. And then there's a number of different healings that, I recorded a long time ago. But every time people listen to those, they have really profound reactions. I get a lot of Facebook messages about it from people all over the world, actually. So, in that SoundCloud profile, you can listen to the Reiki crystal healings. I also have some other healings that anybody can listen to if you want just sort of a free. Most of them are kind of short, 5 to 10 minutes long. But if you want just 5 to 10 minutes of some free healing, just please come find me on SoundCloud. SoundCloud.Bevell.
Okay. Now, I think you've also got more than one book out. You want to tell us a little something about some of your other books?
Yeah, so, my first book was called The Reiki Magic Guide to Self-Attunement, and that came out from Crossing Press back in 2007. It's a book that really looks more at traditional Reiki techniques, but it offers the Reiki initiation in an untraditional way. So the way it works is that, again, for a number of years, I would really experiment with different shamanic techniques to try to see what was possible beyond what was traditionally taught in Reiki. And so what I discovered was that there was a technique where you can send the initiation in Reiki, something called an attunement, where you can send it through time to anybody who does a specific action. And so the action that I created was just that anybody who reads a certain passage in the book out loud would become initiated to Reiki. So that book basically has an unconventional form of initiation, but the information that's in the book beyond that is fairly traditional in terms of the traditional Reiki hand positions, the traditional symbols. There are a few alternative techniques in there as well, but most of the information is traditional. And then I have another book, Reiki for Spiritual Healing, which sort of expands upon some of these shamanic techniques with Reiki, working with the higher self to do things with Reiki that are sort of outside the box. And then I have another book that's actually coming out in about a month called Energy Healing for Everyone. And that accesses a form of light that isn't Reiki, but it's a different form of energy healing that my guides tell me go back to the ancient Essenes. And the Essenes were a mystical sect of Judaism.
At Qumran.
What's that?
Yeah, they were located at Qumran.
Yeah.
The Qumran caves, they were hiding out there, I believe it was. And that's where they also found the Dead Sea Scrolls I think they're the ones that belonged to the Essenes.
Yeah, a lot of people ascribe think that the Dead Sea Scrolls were written by the Essenes, and I know the American psychic Edgar Cayce, he attributed a lot of spiritual wisdom to the Essenes as well. So, so my guides have told me that this energy that I call Light of the Eternal One, that's taught in my book Energy Healing for Everyone, my guides told me that it actually goes back to the Essenes. I actually have an interesting story on that, if you don't mind me sharing it, because
sure.
I wrote the book in 2008, and it's something that just like some of these Reiki techniques, it's something that just came to me. It wasn't something where I studied with a teacher, and so this technique came to me, and I wrote the book in 2008, and I kept sending it out to different publishers, and all the different publishers would say, well, it's a very well-written book, and we really like the energy, but, we're not going to publish it. And after a while, after a number of times that happening, I decided to talk to some of my, spiritual healers and a shaman friend of mine. We did a deep session on it. And during that session, the information that came through was that this technique actually went back to the ancient Essenes, and that until I actually honored the Essenes in the book, that the book was not going to be published. And so then I went into the introduction and just, mentioned the Essenes and tried to credit them as being the source of this work. And wouldn't you know, literally within weeks of doing that, a publisher picked it up and said yes to it. So for me, that just really confirmed that connection to the Essenes.
I see. I know that I've heard tell other authors that write things that are not exactly mainstream, say they have trouble being picked up by mainstream publishers. There's a nick of paranormal publishers out there, New Age publishers, though, that will usually take this kind of material, but it sounds like your case was perhaps a little different than that.
Yeah, we tried certain, I tried, the publisher who had published my other Reiki books wouldn't take it. Sounds True, which publishes a lot of New Age books, wouldn't take it. Hay House wouldn't take it. Like a lot of the publishers that are known for being a little more New Age, you wouldn't, they all said that they liked it, but none of them would publish it. So, I really felt that this information that came through in that healing made sense to me,
Okay. So now, do you also teach Reiki, in your spare time, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I teach Reiki. I teach it, primarily I teach it at the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies in Rhinebeck, New York. I lead their traditional first and second degree Reiki trainings as well as their Reiki Master trainings. We have a 5-day Reiki Master class coming up at the end of August this year. But I also teach some out of my home as well in Hyde Park, New York. And I love teaching Reiki. It's a pleasure both to teach the traditional methods as well as some of the non-traditional methods that are in my books.
So you got anything going online for learning classes, forums, groups, anything like that?
I have some groups on Facebook. There's a Facebook group based on the most recent Reiki book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living. So on that group, people often share different insights that they have about the techniques, or they might ask me questions. I get a lot of Facebook questions as well. So I don't have any online certification programs in that way, because I feel like the books pretty much can teach you most of what I would like to teach. But I do, I'm certainly always happy to answer questions online, and I do a lot of postings on some of those Facebook groups.
Now, just out of curiosity, the group you do for the Institute, I guess you'd call it, do they, is that a certified Reiki class?
Yes, it is. It's a certified Reiki class, and
so people that come and take your class, they get certified.
Yeah. Now, for the master level, you do need to have already had the first and second degree training. It wouldn't have to have been with me. You could have gotten it with somebody else. But anybody taking the master level would have to have had second degree Reiki training before entering into that class. But once the person completes the work, I do offer them a certificate at the end, yes.
Oh, okay. That sounds interesting. I had no idea, how the system works. I mean, like I said, I know people that do Reiki, but I have no idea how they get certified and what the process is all about and, what are the benefits to it and all that sort of thing. But I take it it's really gotten to be pretty popular nowadays because I hear so many people that are claiming to be Reiki masters that I have to wonder with so many, could it all be that they are, or they all just self-proclaimed, in other words? Right.
So, the thing about Reiki is that it's very, I would say, two things. One is that there are a lot of Reiki masters out there, and I do think that, the quality might vary in terms of the teachings of some. I think, some are really dedicated and wonderful in what they offer. Some people might be, maybe a little less knowledgeable. But the thing about, Reiki is that it's kind of like, what the Reiki master does is it's almost like they kind of go into your energetic system and turn on a light switch. And once that light switch is on, it's on. And so, even though it may sound like a little silly that somebody could, become a Reiki master in just 5 days, really, the primary part is about, teaching them how to turn on that energetic light switch. And that's really just about a different sort of sequence of sacred symbols that one puts into a person's crown chakra and into their hands. And it really does work. I've been teaching Reiki since 1995 and find it to be a very powerful system.
Okay. Now, does this system require for it to work for you to get your chakras cleared out or, have a better balance, fine-tune yourself, so to speak?
So, somebody who's energetically clear and whose chakras are aligned and more open certainly is going to flow the energy stronger than somebody who isn't. But even if somebody isn't, the energy will still flow. And the belief in Reiki really is that the energy isn't yours. So as I'm doing a Reiki treatment, it's not my energy that's going into the person. It's literally that energy coming through me from the divine and then going into the person. So certainly it's more beneficial if you as the healer are energetically clear and clean. That certainly would be best. It can still work on some levels even if you aren't.
You know, I've heard a lot of preachers from the pulpit that would talk about trying to be a tool for the Holy Spirit, rather than, you know, trying to do things on your own, in other words. Sounds like it's a similar teaching there going on.
I would agree, yeah.
But that, you know, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, I guess we're all kind of like a little drop of God in each body, you might say.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you had one other book out. Before we get gone too far, and I forget, was that the only other book you had out there, or do you still have more books? I mean, how many books do you have total, for example?
Well, so right now there's 3 that are published, and then there's one that's going to be released in a month. So the 3 that are published are the new Reiki Software for Divine Living, which came out last year, and Reiki for Spiritual Healing, and the Reiki Magic Guide to Self-Attunement. Those all deal with Reiki. And then the one that's coming out next month is called Energy Healing for Everyone, A Path to Wholeness and Awakening, and that's the form that relates to the ancient Essenes. That actual energy is not Reiki. It's something I call Light of the Eternal One.
So Reiki could also be a path to ascension or to enlightenment?
Yeah, actually, the founder of Reiki, Mikao Usui, used to use a practice that has, in some ways, sort of fallen out of the Reiki lineage, but it is now starting to come back in. It's something called Reiju, which is sort of a powerful energetic blessing that he would do on his students over and over again with the intention that it would help sort of clear their channels as well as lead to deeper states of spiritual consciousness. And, you know, back at that time, you know, it was really more about a spiritual path than it was about a healing path. So it was really meant as sort of an energetic path towards awakening, and the healing component was more sort of a side benefit.
Yeah, I was going to say a fringe benefit.
Yeah, and now it's almost like those have sort of changed roles. So now it's, you know, often seen more as just a healing modality, and some people, you know, don't even realize that there's this spiritual awakening aspect to it.
Okay. Now, do you by any chance visit hospitals and, you know, try to pass along healing energy while you're there? I mean, I'm just curious about that.
I have worked in hospices before. I used to do some hospice work in San Francisco, and also when I visited with a friend in Portland, did some hospice work. And I also, at Omega Institute, not only do I teach catalog workshops there, but I've also lead something called the Peace Program for the seasonal staff there, where we do different energy trainings, and we're always sending energy out to the world for world peace. But as part of that, we have often worked with the Cambodia AIDS Project, where we send distant treatments to people who have HIV who are living in Cambodia. Have a connection with a nun there, a Buddhist nun named Beth Goldring, who will send me the names of those people who need the healing, and you know, we will send healing to all of those individuals as part of our training. So in that way, yes, I have tried to sort of, you know, offer that energy in a way that is just sort of as a form of spiritual service is how I see it.
Now, I heard you say a Buddhist nun. Isn't that sort of I guess you'd say a non-diploma or a paradox of sorts?
No, not really. Actually, there's there's a lot of, I mean, it's not the same kind of nun in terms of the kind of garb that they would wear, but in the Buddhist traditions, there are nuns. Again, it's, maybe a little bit different than one would consider like a Catholic nun or something like that. But, they are, spiritual orders where it's, all female and where they are dedicated to their own spiritual Buddhist path. So, that actually, if you ever travel in Asia, it's quite common to see Buddhist nuns around. And they're almost like, you can almost think it's sort of the female version of a Buddhist monk. So in a lot of those traditions, a woman isn't allowed to be a monk, but they can be a nun. So, it's not that uncommon, actually.
I got to tell you, until I talked to you today, I never knew there was anything other than a Catholic nun. I thought they were specific to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either until I started working at Omega and came in touch with a number of Buddhist nuns, because I also sometimes hire some of the meditation teachers who work there, and several of the people who I've contacted have been Buddhist nuns. So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned that this Reiki healing is, shamanic in nature from the, time memorial, so to speak. Does it have any connection to Buddhists? I mean, or is it just a non-religion specific healing art for anybody?
Yeah, so with Reiki, there's a lot of stories about the founder. Some, founder Mikao Usui, some of the stories relate to him as being a president of a Christian seminary in Japan. Some of the stories relate to him as being a Buddhist monk. Which stories were true, who knows? But the thing that was important to me is that whatever his beliefs were, he went deep enough into them and surrendered his will enough to be able to access this energy that we call Reiki. So, again, the way that Reiki's taught now in modern days, there's no necessary religious affiliation that is attached to it. I've known people who are Christian who study Reiki. I've known people who are pagans who study Reiki. I've known people who are Buddhists who study Reiki. So it doesn't really matter what one's particular religion is. It's just the belief in Reiki is that the energy is coming from a higher source, and we kind of leave it up to the individual to determine what name they want to give for that.
My guess would probably be that the Christian sects that or churches, whatever, that do study it or have members that study it or condone it or whatever, they're probably the less dogmatic of the literalists are out there, the conservative side of it, in other words. Because I've
Right.
known some people from the conservative side in my personal life, and I don't think none of those would be that accepting.
Right, yeah.
I'm not on that list. I'm on that list, don't get me wrong. I left the church long ago, but in favor of spirituality. But I'm just saying from what I know of people, in other words.
Sure, no, I totally hear what you're saying.
Okay. Well, we got about roughly 15 minutes remaining. Is there anything you'd like to throw out there that I haven't thought to ask you, maybe?
Well, I just wanted to share a little bit about my own personal journey with Reiki, because I don't always go into this aspect, but a lot of people might sort of ascribe it and think, well, it's just kind of this new age hocus pocus and doesn't mean anything. But for me, in my own journey, I had a really pretty challenging childhood in terms of the being a lot of abuse, a lot of violence, sexual abuse, things of that nature. And if one was to look at me statistically, I probably should have ended up either in a mental ward or in prison, one or the other. And even though on my journey, I did do some traditional therapy and found some healing through that, for me, it was really through the energy healing that I was totally able to sort of clear my energy of any abusers from the past and really claim my power as a human being and feel that I'm a pretty sane and easygoing guy these days. So when I look at where I came from and where I am now, I really attribute most of that shift and most of that healing to Reiki. So for me, it really has changed my life, and I think I consider myself to be a very happy man these days. I'm happily married. I've got a beautiful wife, and when I look at myself statistically, I probably should have been one of those less fortunate individuals given how I grew up. But I really thank the healing power of Reiki for being able to change my life in an amazing and profound way. So I really, I encourage anybody who's just thinking about it, who's unsure, just give it a try. Even if you're not able to afford a Reiki training, you can still learn the concepts from my books. They have the ability to actually empower you, and just try it on yourself and let yourself be the judge of whether it works or not. Because for me, it's been the tool that's made all the difference.
Okay. I know, like I say, I've heard a lot of other people that are doing it. I don't see how anybody could call it New Age, though, because it's really been around for, ages and ages. So where they're getting that at, I'd have no clue. You said you dated it back to the Essenes, but I suspect it might even go further back than that, and you just hadn't found out yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I just sort of threw it in that New Age box because you often, find books about it maybe at New Age stores or in the New Age section of Barnes and Nobles and things like that. But I certainly agree with you. I think it's certainly actually quite ancient in terms of, the wisdom. It can certainly be traced back to, Mikao Usui back in the 1800s, and I'm sure that it probably existed before him as well. So I agree that it's actually more an ancient bit of wisdom than something that's new to humanity.
Okay. Now, while you were talking, I went ahead and went to your Facebook page, and I liked your page, and I, added you as a friend as well.
Oh, great.
So listeners, if y'all want to get to know him better, he does have a Facebook page and he does have a Facebook profile. And, can you tell us what some of your groups are out there on Facebook?
Yeah, so the groups that I've actually formed, one is New Reiki Software for Divine Living, and that's basically an online community where we share insights about techniques that are based on the book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living. And then the other Facebook group I have is a page called Energy Healing for Everyone, which is about the book that's coming out. And on both of those pages, I often will share either YouTube videos or SoundCloud audio tapes that offer free, short free healings for people who just want to experience the energy. So again, please come visit those, and you can just get an energetic taste of those different modalities and just see if it's something that you'd like to know more about.
Okay. Now, is there any other, new things you're going to be doing in the near future that you'd like to let them know about? New CDs, you already told about a new book, or more new groups or forum or anything else you can think of?
Well, I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about the book that's coming out, Energy Healing for Everyone.
Okay.
That is really so incredibly simple. I really feel that a 5-year-old could not only learn it, but probably teach it. It has one primary hand position, which is to put your hand at the top of your head for doing healing on yourself. And really what this particular vibration of light is about is really, it's almost more like an energetic sense of communion than a healing. Because when you bring this light in, it really kind of causes the cells in your body, particularly in the brain and nervous system, to sort of like remember their own true divine nature. So, you do a short treatment on yourself. It's even less than 5 minutes to do a full treatment on yourself. And what it brings about is that sense of, it kind of dissolves that sense of feeling separate from everything else in the universe, and it helps you remember that connection, that you're connected to everything, to your fellow humans, to the plants and animals, to the divine, and it just really awakens this deep sense of calm and peace that can also lead to a sense of joy. And so for me, I'm just really excited about it because it's so simple to learn, so simple to use, so simple to teach to others, and it can just really, shift a person's consciousness in a way that, can really make their life be for the better in terms of just feeling peaceful and calm and at one with all that is.
Okay. Now, listeners, once again, if y'all want to learn a little bit more, you can go to www.bevell.com. www.brettbevell.com. And he's got links to where you'll find out what he's got, and also to get his book. I would ask people that if you're going to buy his book, that you click on the book cover underneath his description I got on my website, because then I get a little commission off of any book that I help an author sell, and it helps to keep Talk Now Radio sponsor free, so that you don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, I'm going to pull out my funding on you if you talk about certain subjects I don't want talked about, which, that has happened to people before. It's better to be listener supported than to have a sponsor that's going to, try to censor your material, in other words. So, I was just thinking, though, when I was listening to you, that if I was to try to describe what you do as a Reiki healing, you would probably be considered as the wire that carries the electricity or the juice or the power from the source to the destination.
Exactly. You kind of nailed it. I actually sometimes use that same analogy when I'm teaching. So that's exactly how I would describe it. That's
kind of the way you kind of come across to me while I was listening to you as well. Okay. Now, do you have any last minute thoughts for everybody?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure, sharing this time with you and as well as your listeners. And, I would just encourage your listeners to always listen to themselves first, always listen to their own intuition and their own sense of right, and to always follow their hearts.
Can't you also use that method when you're, say, like shopping for books or DVDs or something like that, to kind of get a sense of from within yourself that what you're purchasing ain't just propaganda?
Yeah, you can. Too, with the Reiki Crystal that's in the book, New Reiki Software for Divine Living, you can actually use it as a meditative tool as well. And, you can sort of get those different intuitive answers using it as that kind of tool to kind of sense like, oh, this is something I should do, or, oh, maybe this is something I should stay away from. So it can certainly be used in that way. And I also think just when your own energy field is clear and clean, that your own natural intuitive awareness gets heightened, so you'll kind of know what's in your best interest and what's right and what's wrong, so to speak.
So work on balancing your ego with your soul is probably productive to the cause.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Well, yeah, I know that a lot of people, you go to church, they'll teach you that, you're out to destroy the works of the ego. And really, if you didn't have an ego, you'd have a hell of a time trying to survive. It's part of where your survival instinct comes from. People need to understand it. You can't just go around chopping off parts that do displeasing things. Those have to be brought in line and balanced out with everything else, in other words.
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. I think it's more about, teaching the ego to collaborate and to work with the highest good. It's not about trying to annihilate the ego.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, it's certainly been a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm gonna, put this here in the archives, over the next probably 24 hours. I'll have a copy up on my site, a copy at YouTube, and a half a copy up over at, Daily Motion. If you guys are listening to this at Daily Motion, I'm sorry, but yes, I am using the half a show as bait, trying to help people come over here and listen to these shows while they're live and get in the chat room. I'd love to see some, people communicating in the chat room and that, because I get a lot of people in the archives, but hardly any live listeners at all. And I kind of miss seeing people chat in the chat room. So you guys, come on over. It doesn't cost anything to join the site and to get into the chat room and listen. The site's totally ad supported. So why not? And with that, I guess, unless you've got something else you want to throw out there, I don't have anything else I could think to ask right now. We can go ahead and call her a wrap.
Yeah, let's do that. And again, I just really thank you for having me on your show. It's been a pleasure.
Alrighty, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the show. Folks, don't forget to come and see me. Well, I closed my radio interviews up, but I think the next show is going to be this coming Wednesday. And I'll tell you real quick who I'm expecting to have on here this Wednesday. I get to going too far. Oh, Philip Hoppersberger, and he's going to be discussing his book, Exposure. And I had a chance to read his book, and if you were fans of Dan Brown, I think you might be a big fan of this guy's as well. The only downside to it is he left the end of it on a big cliffhanger to get your appetites wet for the next book, because he's making a trilogy out of this, as I understand it. So come on in and give us a listen. Y'all have a good day, and if you want to thank you guys for listening. I couldn't have a show without listeners anymore, and I could have one without a guest. Y'all be good.